All right, folks. Today we are working on a 2016 Kia Optima. We just bought this car used a few days ago, or a few weeks ago, and none of the windows are working. And I'm sure if you own one of these cars, you know what I'm talking about. You can sit here and hit all these switches. You can hear the motors running, but there's absolutely nothing moving. I done fixed one of the windows. I'm going to show you what I did here, but like I said, it's the 2017 Kia Optima. Walk around here and I'll show you what we got. Alright, so what happens with these window motors, this right here is what they call the spool or the drum. And this is what the cable actually rides around. It's mounted into your door panel. And this here is the gear that sits inside your motor housing. Well, they use some extremely cheap plastic here, and the whole inside of this spline strips out. And the window that I fixed, it was a little bit of a process, but I got it figured out, and it's working. Now we've called Kia, and it's like $1,400 to fix all four of these windows. You got to buy new motors and new spools together. You can't just buy the spool. But of course, the end of that spline is a little eat up anyway, so stick around. I'm going to show y'all how to fix these. Alright, so what I did on this first window that I fixed, it's not pretty. I didn't get it as centered as I wanted to, but it still held, it still worked. I've got the mold, so I'm just going to go along with it. The first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to cap the bottom of this off with another chunk. All right, and I'm going to fill this up with wax, and this is going to create a mold, a wax mold that we're going to need for one of the processes. I'm going to cut this whole center out. We'll remove a good bit of this material, and we're going to take our wax mold, and I'm going to stick it right down here in the middle of this, and I'm going to fill up all of this with JB Weld epoxy. This right here is a kit. You can buy this. I know you can buy this at Walmart. It's like 17 bucks for the kit, but you do get a good bit of epoxy for this. Make sure when you mix this up, you mix it for a full minute, at least a minute. You can go even a little longer. You've really got to upset this stuff when you're mixing to get it to cure out hard. If you don't, it will not get hard, and that's what you got to have. So we're going to pour this whole piece full of epoxy back here. Keep in mind your holes where your cables have got to go. If you got any holes like right here, I'll fill that up with some hot glue from the other side, just so we don't lose a bunch of our epoxy. And just, try to take care of keeping this center right here clear. And once that epoxy sets, I can dig that wax out of there. And then the next step is going to be we'll have to file this down. The first time I did it, I just filed this square to give it some good hard corners to grab. Well, the corners wound up stripping out, so I wound up drilling 4 holes in it and cut off some chunks of 8-penny nails, and those 8-penny nails hangs up into these little cogs that I've got cut out, and I poured epoxy all the way around those, and it gave it a mechanical fasten to the gear itself. And once all, it is a little bit of a process, but this is not something you got to stay out here on and babysit. You can pull your motor out, pull your little gear out, and let your epoxy cure and just go back and put it back together. I'll do some more videos on this as I get further along, and try to add them into a playlist. So if you wind up needing this information, it'll be right there for you. Thanks for checking it out. All right, so I'm on to the next step. I'm fixing to start with the epoxy. Start with, I'll show you this. I've done cleaned out the center as much as I need to. Focus in there. You can almost see where the end of the gear was, and I did go in there and scrape out the bottom to where it would be the same geometry, the same depth down there at the bottom. Here's my little wax. Just filled your mold up with your wax. Now your wax mold will just sit right inside of here, and you can fill all of this void up with epoxy. I've already hot glued the gear to the bottom of the mold. See if we can get a view down in there. You can kindly see the placement where I drilled and put the 8-penny nails. Now this just actually gives it a mechanical fastener to the gear itself. Like I said, the first one that I did, this was actually the chunk that came off the end of the motor. It stripped out, and it didn't hold. Now when you do mix this up, I'll point out, you'll notice you can tell the difference between the first and the second pour. This milkier color right here, that is what you want. That's the hard cured epoxy. This clear stuff, it's more like a hard rubber. It never did cure out really hard, and that's before I started mixing it the way you're supposed to. So just really keep that in mind when you're using this stuff right here. Again, mix it up for a full minute. Mix it vigorously. You really want to upset this stuff. So I'm gonna get this poured up. I did hot glue the hole that I had in here, so we shouldn't lose much of epoxy, if any. And got the whole back side of this covered good with the hot glue so it don't leak out. And we'll check back in a few minutes. All right, so we're back again. I just pulled this motor spool out of my little mold here. The epoxy's been sitting up all night, and I filed it down back to the top of the original spline, trying to keep everything the same geometry, as far as like the depth and the heights of everything goes, where it don't bind up inside the car. And now it's just here's a little wax mold that we stuck down in there, and we filled it all up full of epoxy. Now it's just a matter of digging this out, and you may have some finagling you need to do once you get all this cleaned out. You may have to do some sanding on your spool, just to get a good fit, and make sure everything slides together good. And just keep in mind, now this here, you can see the pins a little bit better now, and they do stick out the bottom just a little bit, but it's not going to be enough to really wear out and hurt the top of this collar right here. But I've been tweaking on this. It's a really strong bond. I think these are going to hold up good, and I'll jump on here too after we've used them for a while and do kind of a review on the work and see how it's holding up and stuff like this. It may not be a permanent fix, I don't know, but we're gonna see how well they hold up anyway. We'll check back in. All right, so I'm pulling the first of the front doors off. This is the driver's side that I'm currently working on, and front driver's side. The back doors only have one bolt right here that's connecting the window to the panel, but the front doors, evidently, it's got a second one right here. It's just up from the speaker. Need to make sure you pull them little rubber grommets out and unbolt your window from the panel. Alright, so this right here is the inside of the door panel. This is what you're going to see when you flip it over. Here's where your window bolts onto. Now this thing has got to be wound up in a very specific order. So what you want to look at, the first time I did this, I had a lot of grinding and binding up, and I couldn't get the right amount of slack out of my cables because I had this thing wound wrong, and they were actually winding around the back side of the gear like this and cutting into the door panel. These things have got to be coming around the front of this gear away from all of this housing right here. So you flip it over and you look and notice this right here is going to be the side that's away from your motor. So that's going to be just the way it's mounted in there. So this cable coming up from the bottom is going to be starting on this side, and then the cable coming up from the top will be winding around in the other direction. Alright, so that was super aggravating. One thing I did, once I got this spool wound up, that's the last thing you want, especially if you get these things wound on there right, is to have all of this explode. So I zip tied the spool in place, and then you take these wires. Once you get your spool wound, you take these wires and you can pick any one of these pulleys you want. All of them is designed with these little notches, and you can start the wire in that notch and spin it around. And all of these cable ends where they go into these regulator slides are spring loaded, so you can get some slack. I did have to take it apart the first time. I had these cables backwards, and this cable here was actually running on top of this. And if you do that, it'll still work, but you're going to hear a lot of grinding and popping from these cables rubbing against each other as the window travels. So just keep an eye out for that. Make sure you don't have any cables overlapping and binding on each other while you're at this stage. It's a whole lot easier to fix it then than to hear all that popping and wrist snapping the cable.